Here we go. Good morning. My name is Dick Doubt, Ke0me, and we're going to talk about ham shack design and ergonomics this morning. And my subtitle is How Do I Have Fun Without Hurting My Back and Straining My Eyes? Slide. So today, we're going to do an introduction, short history of ham radio equipment, what I'll call personal operating style. That is a audience participation game, okay? Ergonomics, what the heck is it? And a little detail on my shack that I put together here in Loveland. And obviously questions and comments. And I'm not a PowerPoint guru, so it's just white background, black lettering, no graphics, no videos, pretty plain stuff. Alrighty, so if you go back to the dawn of radio, 1890s to 1920s, roughly speaking, all these time frames are rough. Spark is king. Radios were very loud, very big, very toxic because the sparks generated toxic fumes, and they were very, very wideband. And I actually found out what that means. Typically today, you're looking at CW signal, what, maybe 500 hertz or half kilohertz, sideband, 2.5, 3, if it's a good clean signal, something like that, 2, 3. Spark, 6 dB points on either side were 50 kilohertz. So you can imagine, there wasn't a whole lot of capacity. But it was kind of more like the Wild West out there. When the radio first started, there were no regulations. Everybody was just building their radios and using them. Starting with Marconi, 1899, when he did his first transmission across the English Channel. And then in 1901, when he made his first transmission across the Atlantic. So, slide. This is a typical spark gap station. Please do not ask me to describe any of the units here, but I do need to tell you, as I told my grandkids, I was not born in that era, okay? That's definitely before my time. No, yeah, that's my original shack I had back in 1910, guys. Okay, and ladies. The only thing I can figure out is these probably are batteries down here in the bottom. This is some kind of a dynamo or something that is making, because it obviously looks like some kind of rotary motor. This, I'm guessing, is the spark. I'm going to guess that's some kind of a receiver. Then obviously, that's got to be the antenna up there. So other than that, I have no idea what those things are. A bug light? Well, I'm sure if that's the coil, it probably operated as a very good bug light. That's the what? Raffle cage. All right, sounds good. I have no idea, but it's probably very high. And I'm just guessing several thousands of volts. Somewhat like a Tesla coil almost, so it's going to be high voltage, which is also giving off lots of ozone, not to mention other toxic fumes. Slide. So in the 1920s to the 1950s, again, a rough time frame, things changed a lot. First of all, good old Mr. John Fleming invented the vacuum tube, which was basically a diode in 1904. Then in 1906, Lee DeForest said, hey, let's put another piece in here and call it a triode. Anyway, that then allowed amplification of signals. It allowed modulation. So CW, Morse code, and AM phone then became the main operating modes. Spark got outlawed, finally, because like I said, it was the Wild West out there. The first Radio Act of 1912 made some restrictions, but it gave no authority for anybody to actually do much about it. So in 1927, they came in and made the Federal Radio Commission, which is, of course, the predecessor to our good, friendly Communications Commission that we have today. And Spark was outlawed on some new amateur bands in 1924 that they made. 80, 40, 20, and 5 were the new bands. And in 1927, Spark was absolutely banned in amateur radio. I found out, doing some research, interestingly enough, it was not banned on maritime ships until, I think it was like 1996 or 1966, but it had to be as a reserve transmitter, which I thought was incredibly interesting, that they still had the spark transmitter there for an emergency. Joe? CW. Yeah. Exactly. And it was, yeah, it was just basically an unmodulated buzz. If Yeah, you make it and break it, and it's this something like that. Yeah, and like I said, extremely wide band. So we're going to take a look at a couple of early stations. Slide. This is a vacuum tube station from probably the 20s or 30s. You can see the big old, I have the, right here, and some tuning elements, some more radio. I have no idea, but I just want you to look at the size of this thing. They're huge, okay, compared to what we have today. Slide. And here we have three young men operating a radio. Again, you're seeing some fairly large items. I'm not sure how they're working here. And I think the other thing you want to notice here, everybody know what knob and tube wiring is? That's how you did the AC back in those days. Yeah, knob and tube. And this was 1922. Now, the ham licenses, by the way, in 1912, when they finally actually started giving out ham licenses with, call signs, well, they didn't want the hams to interfere with any of the good stuff, so they restricted them for all of the wavelengths under 200 meters, which means frequencies above 1,500 kilohertz, or 1.5. So at the top end of the broadcast band. Up was considered useless frequencies. Put the hams there, it'll all go away and die. Because nobody knew back then that was the prime shortwave bands that they were restricting the hams to. So we're going to go a little bit more modern ham equipment here. I didn't say slide. My assistant here is very eager to help me out. If you have ever operated any of the radios that I'm showing, just raise your hand here. We got a selection to look at. Gabe? Okay, Hallicrafter's SX101 HT37. Newer, more compact. Those only weighed 150 pounds total. And these are all tube radios, possibly a few diodes in them, but this was very typical of the probably, I think, 1960s. Slide. And this is KA0CEM, and must be Todd, because it says Todd's Place up there. Heathkit DX20. This is typical of a, yes, sir. All right, very good. Okay, very similar. This DX20 was a 50-watt, CW only, crystal controlled transmitter, and that was very typical for what novices were using back in those days, because they were limited to crystal control, 75 watts on certain bands. And again, we're noticing that it's always a separate transmitter and receiver. Okay, and all tube radios. And our next slide. Okay, I get to raise my hand here. I had a Viking Valiant. That is a 275-watt CW transmitter. It used three 6146s in the final. Most of the hybrid tube rigs used two 6146s. But this was a monster. I could literally work anything that I heard. CW and AM only. The National 303 receiver. No hands raised on any national receivers. Anybody ever had a national receiver? I don't think they were all quite that popular. But I had, oh, there we go. A Ranger, Viking Ranger. Okay, very good. I had a national receiver. It only had one small problem. It drifted. And it drifted in receive frequency so bad that I could be on a code contact, but when I came back, it had drifted so far I couldn't find the station again, so I lost a lot of contacts. But anyway, we're still in the big range. This is 133 pounds, 4 cubic feet, and that's not including the transmatch on top. Okay, our next group that we're going to look at here is a transceiver. Collins made the first transceiver back in the late 50s, KWM1, KWM2. Stephen, raise your hand. You had a KWM2. Anybody else had one of the early Collins transceivers? Okay. Here again, that was the hybrid tube transistor transceivers, because as the electronics became improved, they could start making all solid-state receivers. And the last place that transistors finally took over ham radio equipment was in the power amplifiers. And on the KWM2 slide, we're down to 47 pounds, including the power supply, which is not shown in this picture, and only 1.5 cubic feet. So over the years, our radios have been getting smaller and lighter and smaller and lighter. So we're now into a hybrid solid-state transceiver. Here again, the Inwood TS520 was a good example of that. Now this is the S, I believe, has the WARC bands on it. But here again, you've still got your load and plate and drive controls for your vacuum tube finals. You still had to tune it every time you moved frequency a fair amount. But we're talking, as I said, quite a bit smaller. We're now down to 35 pounds and 7/10 of a cubic foot. Alrighty, slide. From the 1970s approximately onward, we're going to all solid-state radios as far as the new products. Transmitters, receivers, transceivers, handhelds are now getting very small and compact and lightweight. Obviously, the portability is much better as it's smaller. And when we went to solid state, they started making radios that ran on 13.8 or 12 volts DC, which greatly increased portability. All right, slide. And as far as I can tell, the Drake TR7, anybody had any Drake equipment? Oh, TR7. Okay. He traded in for a Collins. As far as I can tell, this was the first all solid-state transceiver. Now that's off the internet, so that may be a not a true fact, but that's the best I could find. And you'll notice there's no output tuning controls on this, because that was one of the advantages of solid state. You did not have to keep tuning your power output with every move. Okay, now so we can see over the years we have just decreased size and weight of our radios. Slide. So, oh, one more. Sorry, I missed the last one. IC 7200. Raise my hand. I had one of those. We're improving it some more. We have a built-in USB port for computer control. We have, particularly on the ICOMs, a twin passband tuning. And a lot of the other radios before that, still you needed a crystal filter for each bandwidth that you wanted. Okay, so it came with the standard, say, 2.8 kilohertz for sideband, and I'm not sure what the standard CW was, but you could get, if you wanted to change the bandwidth, you had to buy an additional filter. Here, you can just tune it with that. And it's a very rugged radio. And that was started in, I think those were started in 2007, and they quit in about 2017, 2018. So now another audience participation. Slide. Oh, one more, not yet. PCs come into play in the 1980s. Okay, and I assume everybody has used a computer in the room. Okay. He never has. Okay, fine. Well, they started to move into the shack as initially as just auxiliary equipment, logging programs, and various other things. Now it's becoming central to many shacks. So, slide. We can show here a shack with a vintage PC. Now, can anybody tell me why this is a vintage PC? Pardon? Not only does it have floppies, it looks like both a 3.5 and a 5 1/4 drive. That's old. Secondly, cathode ray tube monitor, not a flat screen. So now I like this, by the way, as a layout. So keep remembering how he's got the radio laid out. Yeah, I've got the floppies. I don't have any drives anymore. The key thing on this is you'll notice that the computer is now front and center. The radios have moved to the side. So, here we have over, 50, 60, 70 years, radios have been getting smaller. And then all of a sudden we put this big honking CRT and those big monster case computers in our ham shack. Thought that was kind of interesting. Slide. So we're going to talk about what kind of an operator are you, because this is going to lead into how do you want to arrange your station, okay? Because how you operate will dictate where you put your equipment and what makes it easy for you. So, is anybody here an experimenter, just likes to build stuff? Raise your hand. Okay, got a few of those. You can raise your hand more than once, by the way. Anybody a contester? Oh, got Joe back there, okay. DXer, any DXers? Oh, I got a couple more hands. Anybody a collector? Now, a collector can be a collector of radios, QSL cards, awards. Do you like wallpaper? Okay, we got a few of those. Anybody just likes to talk, rag chew? Okay. All right, what do the rest of you guys do? Because not all of you raised your hand. What's your interest? That hasn't been mentioned. Anything? Special events. Anything else? Okay. This list could be endless, obviously, because there's so much variety in ham radio. Earth, Moon, Earth, satellite operation. There's so, like I said, that may influence how you want to set up your shack. Okay, so before we get into the scientific part of it, let's take a look at a couple of shacks here. All right, slide. All right, shack and a roll-top desk. I thought that was kind of interesting. You'll notice, here's his keyboard, here's his computer, second monitor here, mouse, various radio equipment on the side. And there's his bug right down there. So that's one way to set it up. Next. And a computer armoire. And I've only got one concern about this one. The support shelf does not look straight here. I think he's got a little bit overloaded on this. But here again, this is what I call spouse acceptable, because you can close the doors and then, what's that? Out of sight, out of mind. And here again, it will force you to be very, very economical with your space to get all your stuff in. This is a very compact shack. Keyboard down here, radio's there, very nice radio, and a monitor up here for whatever he's doing, and pencils. Almost looks like a planned shoot, not just, oh, here's a picture of my shack, that he actually cleaned it up, because how many of you have an absolutely perfectly clean shack? How many of you have a mess? Okay, there's a few honest people in here. All right. Hey, don't have one. All right. I'll give you a pass on that. Next. Here's what I called the experimenter shack. I don't even know what all this test equipment is, okay? I'll be honest. But he does have a radio in it, obviously, right in the middle, and a monitor up here, and all sorts of test equipment. So this person probably likes to do a lot of work. Tinker. He's a great tinkerer. Slide. With the old stack. And if you follow Ham Nation, Valerie, NV9L, big contester. and she's got all of her stuff in here. And obviously, she's very successful because those are all the award plaques from the various ARRL contests. And this is a collector. When we want to talk about collector, this gentleman right here, W9EVT, I believe is said to have the world's largest collection of ham radio equipment. He also obviously has to have some money. If you can see how far down this goes, it's kind of hard for you people on the side here to see this, but that thing's got to be, what, 50, 60 feet long at least with all the various radios. And then this gentleman on the right, W8ZR, he seems to be kind of partial to Collins equipment. So, again, that was a collector. Joe? I do not know. I do not know. Well, either that or he is very, very wealthy and can give his wife everything that she could possibly want and have money left over for radios. A lot of money left over for radios, because those are not cheap radios. Plus, anyway, so, you know, like I said, in this hobby, there can be almost any kind of interest that you want to pursue. And, of course, let's not forget the ISS. This is the shack on the ISS. That looks like the radio, and I don't know what all the rest of this stuff is. But anyway, I found that, and I thought, well, okay, you know, you got to put it in the space station somewhere. So I'd never seen a shot of that. Anybody worked ISS, by the way? Okay. Oh, I got a couple people in here that have. Great, great. And here is about the most compact I have seen for a while. Monitor, Elcraft KX2, Raspberry Pi, and a folding keyboard. Now, you can't get almost much more compact than that with a display. Okay, so we're going to look at ergonomics. So I must make a distinction here. Economics is what your significant other lets you spend on radios or how much you can hide from them. That is not recommended, okay? Hiding how much it is. And no, radios do not cost $25. Oh, I went to the Hamfest and got this Collins for $25. No, that's not going to fly. Ergonomics, which we'll talk about here, is how to be able to enjoy the radios that you got to spend money on. Ergonomics, an applied science concerned with designing and arranging things people use so that people and things interact most efficiently. Or make the environment fit the user, not make the user fit the environment. And we'll take a look at some of this now. So we want to take a look at lighting, temperature, air quality, noise, posture. Those are all important in ergonomics. Lighting. The monitor that you look at obviously puts out a lot of light. You can see you need 5 times more light to look at the papers on your desk. So you need, if you're writing anything down or looking something up on printed material. So you want to have task lighting that focuses on the area where you're trying to access paper. Temperature, need I say, you don't want it too hot or too cold. Kind of obvious. Air quality. Here in Colorado, we don't have an excess of humidity. But I assume if some people are relegated to a damp basement for their ham shack, you might want to be concerned about that. I'd say on the other end, on the low humidity, would be maybe static discharge. Make sure your equipment is grounded. Noise. Noise coming in and going out. My ham shack's in a separate room. I don't hear the noise of the family. They don't hear my noise. So, and that is very distracting if people have to try to, particularly if you're operating CW and they don't read CW. Although FT8 is almost as annoying. Posture. Posture's the big thing. We're going to talk about that, and that's also involved in how you lay your shack out. Slide. Okay, what is your workspace in your shack? Determine where things are that you use and how often you use them. This is what we call the work distance diagram. Usual work is the thing that you use most often. Pencil, paper, key, whatever. And that's about a 10-inch radius from where you're sitting, okay? The occasional work is things that you don't always touch, okay, which would be like band changes, you know, antenna changes, some other things. And that's up to 10 to 20 inches. Over 20 inches is considered non-working. It's the stuff that you really don't have to touch very often, that maybe just look at, okay? And then width-wise, it's about a 40-inch range in here. That does not look right, because if that's 10, 20, whole point of it is that you've got kind of a circular distance that you're looking at to do your work in. And posture. We sit a lot of hours in the shack, and you want to be comfortable and save your back and neck. How many's ever got eye strain, back strain, neck strain from being in the shack too long? Okay, anybody? Okay, and if you didn't raise your hand, you obviously aren't spending enough time in your shack. Okay, next. According to my good friends at UC Davis, what is good posture? Head upright and over your shoulders. Eyes looking slightly downward. We'll talk about monitor positioning in a second. Backrest, straight, elbows bent 90 degrees, wrist in a neutral straight position. Thighs horizontal, 90 to 110 degrees, feet flat on the floor. That is the comfortable position. Now, obviously, you'll want to get up and move around and stretch occasionally, but this is a long-term, if you're going to sit in for hours on contesting, right, Joe? You want to be comfortable doing that. Now, the monitor, I thought was the most interesting thing that I found out. The top of the monitor is supposed to be level with your eyes. The top of the monitor. The most normal, or the less fatiguing, is to look down at a 15-degree angle for the top of the monitor and about a 50-degree angle at the bottom. So that is your optimal viewing zone. And that's a lot lower than most people have. And if you look at those remember those last slides I showed, they had monitors way up here. So what you're doing is you're cricking your neck back like this to look at your monitor. And how many, okay, now this one you have to be honest on. How many of you guys have bifocals? Come on, fess up. Trifocal or worse, progressives, whatever. That actually makes it a lot worse because and I talked to my eye doctor about this because I told him what I was doing and he kind of just shook his head. But he said at 25 to 30 inches, the amount of room you have in your progressives to actually focus on it is very narrow. It's very hard to focus. Slide. So, oh, that's awful small. I'll have to read that. Sorry, guys. The right viewing distance is the one at which the computer operator can easily read the screen without experiencing eye strain. I think that's obvious. The viewing range of about 15 to 27 inches provides visual comfort for the majority of users. Now, there's a little caveat on that, which I'll read. The correct distance is at least the point at which you can't make out the individual pixels, so it's also heavily influenced by the resolution of the display and the size. So obviously, if you have some like 55-inch or 60-inch TV or monitor that you're using in your shack, that will make a difference on how big the pixels, not pickles, are that you're looking at. And if you can't see the images clearly, increase the font size. Don't force a closer viewing distance. And that's the problem I had. I did not know for a year and a half that you could change the font size on WSJTX. Did anybody know that? Oh, dear.
I did a lot of work in the field with ergonomics with Jim. Absolutely, what you're saying is absolutely true. So,
thank you, Joe. And I'll show you what I had to do later on my shack to make so I could see the stuff on the screen. Okay, and then there's also the 20-20-20 rule. For every 20 minutes of screen time, stop and look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. That gives your eyes some break and reduces the eye strain. So, and that's hard to do, especially when you're like in a contest or something. If you also stand up and walk around, that helps your back also. If you have two monitors, do you use one monitor more than another? If you do, put your primary monitor, and it says roughly 70%, it's up to you to determine, put your monitor straight in front of you, and put your secondary monitor off to the side, and with the centers touching. If you can't make up your mind, or you have equal uses, put the monitors right in the middle of your view line at an angle like that. So,
is there any guidance on whether, if you're doing the left-hand side there, if you put that extra monitor on the left or the right side?
I didn't see anything, and mine's on the right side, so.
It's where I would put it too. That's where I have one.
Yeah, well, I don't think it makes a difference because, yeah. And now, if you have 3 monitors, well, you know, you're probably going to have to, yeah, we'll get one of those too, Joe, where we have vertical monitors. It depends on, here again, what are you doing? What do you need to do it so you're having fun without hurting yourself? Whether it's 1 monitor or 7. Slide. So, and I talked about task lighting a little bit earlier. Monitors generate light. White paper reflects light. So reading paper requires 4 to 5 times more light. The solution is to increase the amount of light delivered to your desk surface so that your paper documents are better illuminated. And I talk about an ergonomic light. That is basically a light that has adjustments, horizontal, rotation, vertical, and intensity. And a lot of the new LED lights, little lamps have them, so you can adjust it so you can focus it exactly where you want the most light, okay? And that hopefully ends up in reduced eye strain on your eyes. So, shack number 1. Again, audience participation. What do you think of this shack? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What are your thoughts on it? Monitors are kind of high. Now, I can't tell if he's exactly what he's running. It looks like a digital, you know, some digital modes of some. But, I mean, it's clean and efficient. He's got things where he can get at them. But his monitors are high. So if he stares at that a long time, I'm concerned that he is going to end up with some neck strain. Now, there's your vertical monitors, Joe. Obviously, his lower monitors are low enough. In fact, might almost be too low to look at. And the thing that intrigued me about this is as you get to the top monitors, it's curving back. So if you think about that workstation thing, that you make it in a curved, and that would be easier on the eyes. This looks like it is probably a ham shack with also some video production or something. I'm not sure what this all is. It's whoever WA5RAY is. So anyway, but there's one. So do you like it or not like it? Or do you just want to have enough money to buy all those monitors? Pardon? Yes, odd corner here because he can only look at these monitors. Here he's having to turn his head over 90 degrees. So we're going to assume that these are a much less used equipment, or he actually moves over here. So we don't have a lot of detail on it, but just, you know, for your thoughts. Okay, check. Nice radio. And by the way, this is the essential element that everybody should have in their shack. If you don't have an MFJ Versatuner 2, I do not know how you can survive, because I can't. If you're not familiar with it, it is a combination watt meter, SWR meter, and antenna tuner with 2 outputs plus a 4-to-1 balanced line. So they are really nice. I've got a couple of them. Okay. What's different about the computer on this jack? Anybody notice? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's a Denon, but I don't know what it is. So it's audio, video equipment of some sort. Uh-oh. Stay right up there. The key thing, if you look at that, is the radio is in the middle, and the monitors are on both sides. So there's no primary monitor. He has to look to either side to see the monitor. You know, that might, that could be. The waterfall on the radio would be the primary item he's looking at, so he may not need the monitors that much. So that's an example of how do you operate? You know, what are you doing with it? Here is another shack. I wasn't quite sure what was going on here because he's got 2 laptops in addition to his monitors. The monitor, I assume the main monitor is in front of him. He's got his bug, he's got his headphones. I guess that's the mouse over there. Microphone. But I'm not sure what these 2 laptops are doing here. In any case, they're a little high up. I'm thinking that might be a little tough on the neck. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea of what I did on my shack when I moved to Loveland in 2017. So I started from scratch, and I'll show you various iterations of how I put it together and what happened, and what I liked and what I didn't like. So my goals: separate room for noise reduction, both incoming and outgoing noise. Large flat surface for equipment, separate operating area from building and testing, access for antennas and cabling, and being able to change layouts. Also, adjustable lamps for lighting, a master AC power switch, get a decent chair. I was not going to use a folding chair up in my shack. Storage for junk, and could I separate the AC feed from RF cables if the radio got into the power supplies? So that's the start. I got a big slab of wood. It's a 3/4 inch piece of plywood from good old Home Depot, sanded plywood, and that's 30 inches wide and 7 feet long, because I had 7 feet to deal with. And you notice there's the armoire in the corner that actually was going to be my shack, but it turned into be, that's where I'm going to do some of my testing equipment. Got an armless chair, so the chair would fit underneath there, because I put it at the same height that you would a desk, which I think is like 30 inches, 32 inches off the ground, okay? So if you remember the posture thing, when I'm sitting at the desk, or sitting at the shack, my arms are basically at a 90 degree, the elbow's at a 90-degree angle, okay? Next. Okay, we put some equipment in here now. So there's a laptop, and there's the IC7100, Kenwood TS830S. That was a gift that I coerced my brother to give me because he got it from a friend of his that passed away. And since he didn't pay anything for it, I figured he could give it to me since he had plenty of other stuff. I can't see that. And a couple of lamps, probably not the best organization. Next version, I've got the laptop here, and I've got a separate monitor because this laptop was just too small. I was doing primarily FT8 at that point, and it just was too small. The 830's moved over here, power supply. That's an SWR bridge for the Kenwood. And the 7100 is over here, and you can't see it too well right there, but that's the MFJ antenna tuner. And I'm thinking this is a posed photograph a little bit, simply because I don't see any coax cables going up here, and I've just got a wire that looks like a, just kind of a long wire just to see if I can receive. But anyway, that was the next phase. This one, the laptop has been shoved back underneath. I got a docking station for it. And so now I've got a separate keyboard and mouse, and I'm using the monitor here. And I was going to use this for a file server or something, but I just ran out of space. There's just way too much stuff in there. Heathkit watt meter SWR bridge showed up. I'm not sure why. And here, of course, is the MFJ antenna tuner. So here again, computer is front and center. And then the key is over here. What was left over on my plywood, by the way, from the 30-inch by 7 foot, I made a various number of these little shelves so I could just stack equipment on it, because I'm really big into reconfiguring things. I don't like to make it into one fixed arrangement, because then I can't change it. Next, I had a little bit of a change. I went to 2 monitors. Actually, this is a 27-inch television, so every time I turn the shack power on, I have to turn the television on, versus a monitor, which just comes on. And oh, look, a 7300 showed up. I wonder where that came from. Probably Santa Claus. And, huh? $25. Yeah, $25 from DX Engineering. And so you notice I'm in a little bit of a semicircular arrangement here. And of course, 7300 feeds the MFJ. That's just for show. It's not connected. And I've got a lamp here and a lamp here. This is the adjustable ergonomic lamp I was talking about. It pivots down here, both like this and like this. And it's got an articulated here. And it has a intensity control. I think it's like $25 on Amazon. So that was the next iteration. And then you notice I'm getting some wallpaper up on the walls there too. And there is the current layout. All the wallpaper. Oh, there's the access hatch. This is why I got this room. It's kind of like an upstairs, like an office kind of a thing with the double doors on it. So I've got now 2 monitors. Second monitor, CSU Surplus, $40, 27-inch monitor. Since he's a CSU student. Anyway, so 7300, MFJ, the 830's up there, kind of for show. Light, and I had another light over here. Important things. I also have gone from a laptop to a small compact PC. Okay, this is a very small case, and it fits underneath here. Keyboard, mouse, coffee cup. Okay, and over here, Santa Claus also actually did bring me a Raspberry Pi. So I've got kind of, it's on the end here just for kind of, let's play around with it and see what we might want to do with it. Because obviously it'll run FT8. It's got enough horsepower to do that. Now, this is kind of a side view. By the way, the rack there, aluminum rack, came from, there's a surplus, not a surplus, one of those secondhand charity stores up in Fort Collins. They had it listed for $7. I said, yeah, okay, well. And so that's our printer rack. Also notice underneath here, right over here is a 2-drawer file cabinet, Walmart, $25. There's another one underneath here that has 4 smaller drawers, Walmart, $25. So I can move them underneath here. Slide. Pardon? That's right, $25. Next. And what I did here, I stole this idea from my roll-top desk, if any of you has those. I put a little notch in here, and I had, these are shelves from some other, like a bookcase or something, so it costs $0. And I can slide these in and out. So if you can see, I've got kind of that circular or semicircular work surface that I was talking about earlier. Slide. Now, as I said, when I started out, I couldn't read the monitor. Because this TV, I had lost the feet to it, so I had it on a wall mount back here. I literally could not read it. And I was squinting. It was terrible. So I built just a little case, because it's got a wall mount here, and I moved it out here. So it's about 27, 28 inches from my eyes. And I increased the font size on WSGTX. That made a big difference. So you can see here again, I've got the semicircular thing over here going, and yeah, that was actually pretty clean. It doesn't look anywhere near that nice. And with the shelves out, it works out pretty good. And on the left side, just kind of want to show you now the power supply's stuck over here, and the PC's over here. So I've got the radio. The output of the radio goes to the input of the MFJ. And by the way, this is the newer MFJ with the cross needle. I love that. And it also has a built-in dummy load, which is nice. And so output 1 of the tuner, it is connected to nothing, because I will be doing some kind of Oh, I've got a mag loop that I put up sometimes. Sometimes I try to build some other antennas and hang them in the upstairs to see if they work at all. So usually it's not used. So it's always on output 2, which goes into the IT100 auto tuner. And then that goes out to a 20-meter crooked dipole in the attic, which I use between 40 and 10 meters. I just use the auto tuner. I have no idea what the radiation pattern is, but so far I've got 89 countries on FT8 running between 30 and 60 watts. Anything over about 50 watts, I start tripping breakers in the house. And got WAS on 20 meters and 49 states on 3 other bands. And that 50th state, Wyoming, South Dakota on another one, and on 40 meters it's Alaska, simply I think because of the distance. And needless to say, a 20-meter dipole on 40 meters is not very efficient radiator at all. But it works, and obviously the coax is probably radiating some also. So like I said, I have no idea what my radiation pattern is, but you know, I'm able to work people. And on the monitor, there's my FT8 main screen. There's the spectrum display, and up here is JT Alert, which shows you if you're familiar with that program. And then down here is I'll call it my Google window. I use like Logbook of the World display. There's also a ham call where if I see a call, I can look them up if I want any information about them, like who their QSL manager is, and just whatever else. Then on the right side monitor, which you don't see right here, is my logging program that I use. Oh, and just the other thing you have to be concerned about, depending on how big of a station you're running, is power. I don't have a dedicated circuit, so I'm running on a residential 15-amp circuit that I'm not sure is shared with how many of the other people up on the second floor. So I figured that maximum power output on the 7300, maximum power consumption. What?
Oh, when I was living at the house, my computer was 650 watt power supply on your circuit.
Okay, when Gabe's bedroom is right next to where the ham shack is, and when he was, before he moved out to CSU, he has a very high-power gaming computer, and at that point, we still didn't trip it from actual overload on 15 amps. The only breakers I tripped was because RF interference and the crummy Eaton Cutler Hammer arc fault breakers, which that's a whole nother subject that I won't go into. If you have them, I feel sorry for you because I have them. Anyway, so maximum power consumption on 7300, 430 watts. The Dell Optiplex, 240 watts max. 2 monitors, about 200 watts. Printer, 50 watts. Bad formatting on my part. 20 watts for lamps, and so about 940 watts, which is 7.8 amps. So I'm using less than half of the capacity of that circuit. Future projects, hide the coax from the radio to the attic. That my wife has commented numerous times, and that's an indication you need to do something, that it needs to be less ugly. Continuing to try to improve antennas because, like I said, my primary antenna is a 20-meter dipole in the attic. And it works, but not great. I want to use the Raspberry Pi in the shack, and I also have a Go box. If any of you came out to the field day last year, that's where the 7100 resides now, is in the Go box, and just keep working on it, make it smaller. Questions, comments, anything else? Right, the comment was that for a good and inexpensive desk, go to a surplus place like Uncle Benny's and get a flat door, and especially if you can get a solid core door, although they're a lot heavier, and just put it on 2 file cabinets, because that basically is what I had, except the file cabinets were actually underneath the structure of the desk, and that would work. Greg?
Yeah, you mentioned CSU surplus earlier for your monitor. If no one's ever
some scientific equipment, power strips, power distribution, computer power supplies. A typical example of a computer I just got. I haven't bought a new computer since I bought a Packard Bell in the 90s, and I always run Linux, so if I get an older computer, it works just fine. But Dell Precision Workstation T3500, Xeon processor, 8 gigs of RAM, $130, and that was one of the top of the end, top of the line computers I had on the
Another
shelves.
comment there, if you ask them, they will move hard drives, memory, video cards, whatever, between those and charge you the difference.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
there's not something on the shelf that's exactly what you want, ask.
Yeah, I use solid state drives, and all their stuff is spinning disks, so they'll take that out for you for knock a little bit off the price, or add more RAM in its place. And there's a test station there. If you buy a monitor or a computer, you can test it on site. And they are up there on Lake. You turn in off of South College onto Lake, and they're just across railroad tracks Monday through Friday. Closed next Monday, probably for President's Day, but open Monday through Friday. Great place.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to comment that, as you notice, I mentioned about getting things from various more or less surplus places. Let's face it, the radios are expensive, but a lot of the other stuff can be gotten, like the computers, the monitors. I think the Dell Optiplex that I got, it's a little bit older machine, but it was I think it was barely $100. Now that was down at Micro Center in Denver. They have some surplus machines they sell also at a pretty reasonable price. Joe?
We're getting our mics up here. I noticed that you had a antenna tuner on top of an antenna tuner. Why?
That was for show. It actually wasn't an antenna tuner. It was an MFJ, what do you call it, artificial ground. And I bought it, and I had played with it a little bit, but I didn't have much success with it. And I don't know whether it was because of the way I set it up or whatever. It has mixed ratings on EHAM reviews. Some people swear by it. Some people swear at it. But yeah, it's and some of that stuff there was for show, for the photographs, I admit. But that's the other issue. I am on second floor. I have no ground other than what comes through the the AC line. So I do not have a separate ground outside. That's something else I was thinking about doing this spring, if I can figure out how to get a piece of wire from the shack down to the ground from the second story without it then becoming an antenna or a radial itself. And so we're looking at 10, 8, 9, 50, probably 20 to 30 feet of ground wire before it hits the ground rod. And that's certainly not an ideal situation. I did find out, though, if I use a balanced antenna, like a dipole, I don't have anywhere near the problems with tripping the breakers in the house. When I had a long wire in the attic that I used with the auto tuner, and yeah, the auto tuner tuned it, but the other half of the circuit was all the wiring in the house. And depending on what was happening, for example, it would not trip a circuit in the kitchen unless somebody had like a hot plate plugged in. Then it would trip it. It wouldn't turn the microwave off unless somebody was using the microwave. So anything that has a long piece of copper wire on it will act as an antenna. So it just kind of depends on the band you're on, the power you're using, and also with the arc fault breakers. If you're familiar with those new ones that are required in new construction, I have the Cutler hammer, or actually it says Eaton, but they're Cutler hammer design. Those, when they first came out, the ARRL had to go file a complaint with the FCC because the way they designed their breakers were very susceptible to being tripped by police, CB, ham radio, you name it. And the FCC actually forced Cutler Hammer, or Eaton, to go back and redesign their breakers. Now, in my house, I have all the, quote, new breakers that are not sensitive to ham radio equipment, theoretically. And I think mine is just because I'm using I don't have a ground on my system, and when I use that long wire antenna, it was looking for a ground path somewhere else for the other half of the circuit. So, but that is something to consider, and it's something that I want to fix this next spring so I don't trip so many breakers, because that does not cause harmony in the household, needless to say. Any other questions, comments? Mike coming.
Okay. We remodeled our basement, and I had what was going to be a bedroom turned into a ham shack. I have about a 15-foot by 8-foot room, and I had a choice of either carpeting it, which might be nice for a bedroom, or solid floor, and I picked the latter because I have to roll back and forth literally. So if you have some choice, carpet is really hard to live with if you're having to move your chair some. And just a thought.
That is interesting, because I remember we had a house we moved into, and we got new carpeting in it, and one day I went over and touched the television, and I didn't have a television anymore. There was so much static electricity from the new carpeting that, I blew out the television. But yeah, that's something to consider. In this case, we have the standard contractor grade carpeting in the house that it came with, and needless to say, it'll probably be replaced in a few years. And at that point, I'm going to try to lobby for a solid floor in that room. Also, if you have carpet and you've got a rolling chair, suggest you get one of those little plastic mats also put underneath it. That will help also.
Actually, let me change that suggestion a bit. Since COVID and even before that, have worked from home, and I've gone through dozens of those plastic mats. They do not last for more than about a month. Hang on. So a buddy of mine talked me into getting what is called a glass chair mat. So it is a big chunk of glass, 1/4 inch thick. Had that now for probably 6 months, and I absolutely love this thing. So I highly recommend them.
Thank you.
Funny enough, free delivery from Amazon for
Of
like
course.
a 48 by 48 inch chunk of glass.
And
it was, I want to say it was like $50, between 50 and $75. It was very reasonably priced.
was it glass or was it polycarbonate?
It was glass.
It was glass. I have seen the polycarbonate, which are like it says, they're like 1/4 inch thick or so. And yes, the little plastic ones, if you use them a lot, or the PVC, I guess it is, they will wear out quickly, and I need to get some of those. But obviously, it's a $30 mat versus a $60 mat. So
$60 mat that lasts 10 times longer than that $30 mat.
exactly, you get what you pay for. Any other comments, sir? All right. Oh, CSU surplus? Yeah. Okay. So the answer is get good quality and it lasts longer. Any other comments, questions, whatever? All right, I think we're done then.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. For more information, visit our website, ncarc.net. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.